Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching this weekly Ag Weather Update brought to you by the Farm Credit Associations of North Carolina. Today, this is actually my last video of 2022. I'm going to take the week between Christmas and New Year's off to spend with family. We're going to go on a short trip, and I'm just looking for some time just to get away with them. So let's cover a lot of big picture things here to see where I think this is going to go, not only at the beginning of January, but beyond that time period. Now, the first thing that you got to take a look at here is, and this is what you've been watching, is basically what has followed an 8-day blizzard. Okay, so this system came down into the west. It dropped over 4 feet of snow in the Sierra Nevada mountains. It then took from Saturday all the way until Friday to do that. That's a long time to move across the country, and this was last week. It was responsible for over 80 reports of tornadoes around the parts of the southern United States and the lower Mississippi River Valley. And the blizzard that it produced on the backside of this was truly, it was an absolutely magnificent system in terms of its dynamics and what it did. 2 to plus feet of snow on the backside here with winds 50 miles an hour. And then over the weekend, it finally moved. I mean, it's just here. That's where it is now. So it's taken just a tremendous amount of time to get across the country. Now, what it's done around us is left a big area of high pressure, and we've actually got cold air that's kind of coming off of the shore like this. And it's kind of neat to see that when you look at it on satellite data, because as the sun was rising this morning, we can actually see what are called the cloud streets that are coming off of the east coast of the United States. So if you notice, there is a very clear patch right in through here, and then all of a sudden these little convective cumulus cloud streets show up here. And what's going on is the moment the air leaves the shore, it accelerates. And it accelerates because there's lower friction over the water than there's over the land. That actually produces some local divergence in the flow near the surface, which means air from above sinks. And as it sinks, it's, of course, drier and it starts to warm. The humidities drop. And this produces this large area of clearing before the convection starts to roll off of the water. So what's amazing about this is that anytime you see the East Coast or the Gulf Coast with this particular type of cloud feature, okay, just go back and forth over here, you know cold air has gone through. Now, as you can also see, there's a lot of very low cloud, some lake effect snow, and snow underneath all of this. In fact, New England got hit pretty hard over the weekend. And there is a system we're going to watch right here, and possibly, now, let me be very clear here, this system may possibly bring some snow, not accumulating snow, at least I don't think right now, to parts of North Carolina. Now, if we go back to yesterday, just as the sun was setting here, you can see, it's almost too late in the animation, but there's just a tremendous amount of snow across the northern tier of the United States. Now, I want you to think about what I'm about to share with you in terms of where we've been. It's just always good to know what the atmosphere's been up to for a while. We have had extensive snowpack across parts of Russia, getting into Mongolia, China, Kazakhstan, and that has pushed the jet stream into a deep trough that's really come screaming off of China and Japan. And from November and through most of December, it has run into a large ridge here. Now, this ridge that's over the Aleutian Islands at times has moved all the way up into the Chukchi Sea and to the Arctic, and it's been kind of mimicked by some ridging that's happened either over Greenland, between Greenland and the Hudson Bay, or even over the Scandinavian countries. So what this has done is the jet stream has gone weak over the top of that and then dove out of the Gulf of Alaska into the Pacific Northwest, or the western part of the United States. So systems keep ejecting like this. And they've been efficient at bringing moisture to us, but we've had some overall ridging in our area that's kept us drier the closer we get to the coast. Now, I'm drawing all this on here for you because I'm about to show you a major change that's happening here. I don't know how long it's going to last, but there's evidence that we're going to bust through this ridge and get rid of it. And that's going to be a significant shift going forward in our precipitation and temperature pattern. So since we're talking about precipitation patterns, what's happened since November the 1st up until 7 a.m. on the 18th of December was that there's been very few places across the country that have been drier than normal. The hard red winter wheat belt has been hit with dry conditions, and even though last week precipitation did come from the system that rolled through into parts of the eastern corn belt, the overall stats is that this area is still considerably drier compared to normal. Now for us, the farther east you go, that's where things have been dry. And it's actually easier to see if I just show you back over the last couple of weeks. So again, this is all from the massive blizzard last week, and some of this is up to 2 feet of snow here. Notice how parts of the hard red winter wheat belt had just a few storms streak through. But notice from Georgia, coastal North and South Carolina, that's been the part of the state that's been drier. So we've got questions as to where this is going to go and what gaps are going to get filled in, and do we have any longer term risk in winter of developing drought? I want to address all those issues here in this last video. Okay, first, because I get asked a lot about this, I just want to let you know all that moisture, look at it again, that's coming right into here, and plus on the headwaters of the Mississippi, has brought the Mississippi River back up above low stage. It got up there early last week. It's currently at 8.44 feet. It's expected to get up to 10 feet very soon. This is still about 15 feet lower than it was before this massive drought happened, but this is deep enough to be moving stuff, basically from southern Illinois all the way down to Louisiana, just as an example here. But what I want to do is I want to come back and keep this discussion going about what's been split across North Carolina in terms of precipitation and temperature. And why don't we start off on the temperature side of it? So I brought this graphic up for Raleigh, North Carolina, and I didn't intend for you to see the numbers. I want you to see the reds and the blues. So what you've got here is your average daily high temperature in black, and then the daily the daily average temperatures around that. Red is where it was, a day was warmer than normal, and blue was cooler than normal. And this was winter, this was the middle of our summer, and here we are now. So in November, we started off very warm, had a stretch mid-November leading up to Thanksgiving that was cold. It broke right back over warm, and we've been oscillating. And we've got big questions as to the tail end of this right down here, where we're going to go. So I want to talk to you about that because this is kind of a bit of an intimidating graphic. There's a model that NOAA runs called High Split, and what I love about it is it allows you to calculate something called backward trajectories. In other words, if you want to know where the air is going to come from, model will tell you. So I did it for Raleigh, North Carolina. And each of these colorful lines represents a different ensemble run, showing you where on the morning of Christmas Eve the air is going to come from. And if you're curious what this part of the world is, we call this the Arctic. And so that air is going to move its way like this and come right over to our area. So we have some substantially colder air that is on its way. And it's rather unassuming right now where it's going to come from, because this is the jet stream pattern today. And what has happened over the last few days is, once again, the Pacific jet has come across and failed to break through the Gulf of Alaska, so it split into one piece that came down to Hawaii, and another very highly amplitude ridge that ran right up here over the Bering Sea, into the Chukchi Sea, and into the Arctic. And what occurred when that happened is the very cold air that was in place here was moved. It was displaced and disturbed. And it has been traveling this past weekend right down here and is setting up very soon into parts of the Northern Plains, but out of like British Columbia, Alberta, Saskatchewan. And that is the air that is on its way toward us later this week. It is already causing major problems in parts of the Northern Plains. So what we see here, all of these shades you see up here are different forms of wind chill warnings, advisories, or watches. And there's a winter storm watch that's right in through here, through parts of Nebraska and in Iowa. So as this all happens and unfolds, it's going to take all the way to the end of the week for it to get to us. And when it gets here, it's going to bring in a very sharp change in temperature. So if we go back to this graphic, I can now show you your 10-day forecast for temperatures, and this is what it looks like. Now I know it's a little hard to read, but this is Monday through Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and where I want to stop you right here, that point, that's Friday morning. European model says that we could see temperatures almost cracking 60, and then where will we be by Saturday morning? 17. Now, this is for Raleigh. The numbers could move quite a bit, but that's a huge change in temperature, and it's going to be borne on very strong winds. Take a look. All of a sudden, instead of having these lighter winds, these are the wind speeds, wind gust versus average wind speed, we're going to switch these winds out of the south, flip them over to west. They're going to get up into the 40-mile-an-hour range on Friday, and that's going to deliver this really, really cold air that's going to come out of this particular area. Now let's go ahead and show you when it's going to get here. We're going to look at temperatures a few different ways in today's report. This is low temperatures today. So this was the cold air that was clearing out today. But watch the Northern Plains. This is minimum temperatures on Tuesday, minimum temperatures on Wednesday. So this is not an anomaly. That's 30 degrees below zero. That's the temperature in Montana. Now, we're going to be 60 plus degrees warmer than that over here in North Carolina, but I just want to show you the origination of this cold air. Great Falls on Thursday will be minus 35, and that is off my color bar. That's over 40 degrees colder than normal. As we go forward, there's Friday. We still hang on, remember early Friday, but the front comes through for us on Saturday. So this is what some of the low temperatures may look like early Saturday morning. Very, very cold conditions that are going to be sliding through, and it'll be here for Christmas morning as well. Now, I'm going to come back to temperatures in a few moments, but I first got to show you there's a system we're going to watch before this. It's today in Texas. So this is the high-res NAM model, and as I play this, this is going through Monday. We're under the protection of high pressure through Monday, even into early Tuesday. But you'll notice that by mid-morning Tuesday, the low that was in Texas is starting to spread some rain into South Carolina. And then as we get here into Tuesday afternoon and evening, you might have cold enough temperatures that just on the northern edge of this, there may be some wet snowflakes mixed in. See that? So this is going Tuesday evening into the overnight hours. See the little bit of snow that could get in there, and ends by Wednesday midday. So we are drier today. The rain chances improve late Wednesday with maybe some cold enough air to get a little snow, but not across the whole state. The big system that's coming is, of course, later in the week. Now watch this. If you remember some of the forecasts that were issued by several different people last week, my forecast last Monday was just too early to fully capture this, okay? But you probably saw wildly ranging rainfall, and probably some folks posted to Facebook and other social media absolutely ridiculous snowfall maps for North Carolina. I'm going to show you what we now know. This particular map shows you something called vorticity, and vorticity is spin in the atmosphere. In particular, positive spin, which means it's going counterclockwise, the direction our low pressure centers spin. And the trough we're watching is right here. It's got a lot of cold air in it. Now, what's important about this is that as we go out there Wednesday into Thursday, this is where the trough digs into the central part of the United States. Now, the ribbon of vorticity, we always watch for where it advects, where it moves to. And so what we see here is that the main movement of this shortwave is going toward like Indiana, Ohio, and Illinois. Now, the problem with last week's forecasts was that this trough was expected to dig all the way down into Georgia and then eject. And now it's here, and it starts to move. Now, what made it move sooner? The tilt of the trough changed. Now, what the heck is tilt? Here's the middle of the trough. I'm going to draw a line right through the lowest heights. You see how that arrow leans backward toward the west? We call that a negative tilt, which means the flow rounds the base and then it quickly ejects. Versus if you had a positive tilt, in other words, let's just imagine that this trough was located over the Great Lakes and the base of it was way back over Oklahoma. In other words, it leaned like that. In that case, it would be digging toward us. And the models just trended this back to the west, shifted its position around by, 500, 600, 700 miles. And now what you're going to see is the big storm system is going to curl through Indiana. There's actually a spread on the position of the low, but right around Indiana, Illinois, Ohio in this area, versus being over North and South Carolina. That keeps you entirely in the warm sector of this storm as it approaches, and then we just have the temperatures drop off quickly after it goes through. But because all the best rising motion is to your north and west, we have limited chances of seeing this system be as high impact in terms of snow production, like you may have heard in several reports from other meteorologists last week. So can I show you the GFS versus the European? So let's play this forward. We've already seen that system. That's the one that comes through us, bringing a little bit of rain on Tuesday. It's out. Now watch the Midwest. You see there's a large system coming through right there. Out ahead of it, what do? We see ourselves in the warm sector. So from Wednesday into Thursday, both models bring in rain to our area, possibly some heavier rain. We'll look at the totals in a few seconds. But the deep low now forms over the Midwest in both models. So late this week, we're dealing with the rain from this system, not the potential for snow. It then curls up, and possibly on the west-facing slopes of the Appalachian Mountains, we pick up some decent snowpack. But still, if this low moves any farther back to the west, we start to reduce the chances of that. This is the European again on the right and the GFS on the left. As we then play it forward, that low, because of its tilt, curls up into the Great Lakes rather than into New England. That also reduced our chances for snow, because it delivers on the backside the really colder and drier air in something we call the dry slot of the cyclone. It's this whole area I'm highlighting right in through here. So this is by Friday, sending all of that brutally cold air our way, but the snow north and the rain quickly clears out. So again, if I could review this with you, this is the rain out ahead of the system coming in Thursday morning. lasting through Thursday. The second shot of it coming with the front, that's probably going to be here some point Thursday night to Friday morning, and the system quickly wraps its way up into New England. Into the Great Lakes, not New England. So what do we end up getting out of it? Well, if we just play this forward, there's the little bit of rain we could get Tuesday. Notice the European model is trying to keep most of it south of you into South Carolina. But then here's the push later. And if we just take a quick look in here, let's just go to east. There we go. And play it out and see what the totals look like. Now what's important to notice about this is where that heavier rain might be by the time we get this system past us on Friday is over the drier parts of eastern North Carolina. And that's a place where we could pick up some rain and it would be good overall. But there's the potential late in this week for a grand total of 1 inch to 1.5 inches of liquid out of this. Snow possibly on the west-facing slopes of the Appalachian Mountains. Now, what happens after this? Because yes, brutally cold air comes in. I'll show you the duration in a few minutes. But remember earlier I said how difficult it was for the jet stream in November to break through the Gulf of Alaska? By the end of this month, every forecast model out there is expecting the Pacific jet to extend from Japan across the Pacific and race across all the way to the West Coast. Now, why is that important? That means we're going to change the trajectory of these systems that are coming in. Rather than coming out of the northwest, they're going to come right into the west. That overall is a more mild pattern, and it's one that keeps things active. So the new data just released this morning from the European model, you're like, okay, I don't see a major deviation from normal. Well, remember, this is the week 2 forecast. It's got to get in here first and then get across the country. I actually think that the GFS has got this more right. In other words, I think there's going to be a more opening of the Gulf of Mexico, resulting in more precipitation as we finish 2022 and start 2023. Now, what are the temperatures going to do? Well, I showed you the low temperatures earlier. In case you were curious about the high temperatures, you can kind of watch 2 big areas. Of course, your home state and then what's going on here in the Northwest. So there's Tuesday's highs getting into Wednesday and Thursday. So a lot of low 40s, warmer along the coast. This is the high temperature on Thursday, minus 19 in parts of Montana. Then this is Friday. We're going to go still quite warm along the coast, but watch the temperatures drop off on Friday as soon as the front comes through. And here we are on Christmas Eve with high temperatures that are not up at freezing, and that kind of sticks around into Christmas Day. We're going to have high temperatures just below freezing on Christmas Day. But remember, the front will have already cleared through here. We're going to have the winds and the much colder air coming behind it. So I think it's pretty clear that over our next 5 days, we watch the cold air get let out. Day 5 through 10, it's sitting squarely over us. But as the Pacific jet, remember this, lines itself out, we see mild conditions returning. This is the new day 10 through 15 forecast, which is the start of January. And the first few days of it look to be much more mild as that pattern opens back up. So which means this is a relatively, speaking in general terms, a relatively short-lived massive outbreak of colder air. Okay, so we need to now talk about where this is all going to go in the longer run. Tonight, in my in-depth report, and then tomorrow in the written report I put out an email for those of you that subscribe to it, I will include the new European model data. I do not trust at all the current run. I think it was poorly initialized, and therefore we need to see more data before we trust it. I actually like a whole lot better the Climate Prediction Center's outlook for week 3 and 4. I think that they're too bold on the coldness here. I think we're actually going to see more mild days going into the beginning of January than we are cold. And I think they would have made this adjustment early this week, just like the rest of us. And I also don't see this large extent of drier conditions. I do expect an active pattern. I think it's going to reduce the risk of it being drier here, which, as you can see, pushes over toward us in the Carolinas. Why is this all, I think, fading? I think a lot of it has to do with the reduction in the strength of the southeastern ridge and the fact that jet stream's just barreling on through the west to start off the new year. So let's go from here to the new 1-month outlook that NOAA released. I can certainly buy into this for January. I think this is what the January pattern is really going to look like. And I wouldn't be surprised if they back off on how, the slight drier forecast they have for coastal regions. You keep an active Ohio River Valley storm track and you end up getting that. And by the way, they updated this last week too. This is their new 3-month outlook for temperatures, January, February, March on the left and precipitation on the right. And I got to be honest, this is a La Nina forecast to the T. So if you said, Eric, what does it look like in winter if there's a La Nina? We tend to be mild across the south and up the east coast and very cold in the northwest and northern plains. The jet stream loves to run in that same area. And we just tend to be drier down here in the southwest compared to normal. This is probably too aggressively dry over parts of the southeast. Okay, so I'm trying to just explain what CPC was seeing, but let's add to this. First of all, we had released last week the new long-range January, February, March outlook from the IRI Multi-Model Forecast Group. And I want to take you in here and show you the North American view. I think I could buy into this. There's two things happening. In this forecast, we are seeing the models letting go of La Nina, but still delivering the flow into the west and through the Ohio River Valley. Now you see it's keeping the drier conditions into Florida and over Mexico, New Mexico, West Texas, Arizona. And I think this is a good forecast because even with La Nina fading, it might be a while before we actually develop that Pineapple Express flow coming from Hawaii on the subtropical jet. So that's why I think they got it right. But I do not see, there are no indications as of today that there should be drought development in North Carolina through this winter, even approaching spring. I just don't have those indications. So we just need to just continue to watch it and discuss it going forward because just to reiterate, because the next time I talk to you, I'll have brand new long-range data from the European model. I think I will at least. This is what we've got here for January, February, March. Do you notice that if there's a drier area, as I labeled, it's maybe down here over Florida, or it's back here in the high plains of Texas into Arizona, New Mexico, or Southern California. I just think we're going to see too active of a storm track just to our west to keep us too dry. So that's good news overall. Now, I mentioned a moment ago that I think that this La Nina is at its peak and it's going to start to fade. I'm going to show you the latest evidence of this. So December 18, sea surface temperatures still cold in this area. And the trade winds right now still going. I think, though, that this, which represents the strength of those trade winds right in this area, okay, this is probably the last major push of these super strong trade winds, which is what makes it a La Nina a La Nina. Because even if the trade winds keep going at faster than normal speeds, I think that the westerly wind bursts out of the Indian Ocean, which have been meeting it, driving this MJO phase 6 thing we've seen, I think these are going to start to fail. Which means we're going to just reach our peak in La Nina, which is normal to reach a peak in La Nina at this particular time. So with all of that, I just want to show you the long-range models are on board with the same idea. And when I return to giving you briefings into January, we're going to spend much of January, February, March just discussing what it might mean for our upcoming spring and summer if we do fade a La Nina and deliver possibly into summer next year. And El Nino, we got to talk about what that means to the hurricane season, what it means to our temperature patterns. There's a lot that's hinged on this forecast getting rid of La Nina. It's a big change. Haven't seen this in 3 years. So I'm going to leave you off with, again, this slide, January, February, March. This is what we really feel like the pattern is going to look like. And I can explain this one better than I can explain the alternative. Okay? So have a great Christmas and a great start to 2023. I look forward to joining you again with these Monday morning forecasts very soon. Have a good one. Thanks.